Okay, our review of the Persian Empire leadership. There's a view of the entire Persian Empire, which was the largest empire to that time. This is going to be at 490 BC, which is when the Persian army was battling in Marathon. And you could probably see the where the battle would take place, and that's going to be over in Greece in the far west, outside of the empire. And this empire included lands that Cyrus the Great had conquered, as well as his son, and then Darius. The two greatest leaders of the empire were Cyrus the Great and Darius, and that's going to be the focus of today's talk. Cyrus ruled from around 558 to 530 BC. He's known for starting the empire by conquering the Medes. At first he was attacked by the Medes, but when he defeated them, he had noticed that a lot of the Mede military had actually refused to fight for their king, and they kind of united under one group. So you had the Persians and the Medes together forming a good, strong military. And he used religious motivation for wanting to conquer the world. He's the first person to really come up with such an idea and have the army to support it. After he passed away, dying in battle, his son Cambyses conquered Egypt, but he was really not someone that knew how to deal with an empire of that size. Darius succeeded him, and he did make many changes to try to improve Persia's empire and run it in an orderly fashion. Cyrus thought of himself as a liberator. He thought of himself as someone who was going to be conquering the world for religious purposes. He was a big believer in Zoroaster. Consequently, he did not take slaves, and he tended to treat the people he conquered well. He did not try to change local laws, local customs. He allowed local leaders to keep their rule as long as they would send tribute to the empire. And of course, famously, he freed 40,000 Jews from captivity. After allowing them to be freed, he actually paid and supported their building of the Second Temple in Jerusalem. The language that the Persians used, the written language, was a form of cuneiform, and their form of government was a monarchy. So they were ruled by a king or a queen, but it was always a king. The king's decision was final on all matters, and the king actually was part of the military, quite often going out and leading them in battle. Although the Persian king usually was not a soldier, they were trained to be soldiers, but they usually ruled from behind the troops. And he was protected by an elite force called the 10,000 Immortals. That was a name given to Persia's elite force by the Greeks. The Greeks called the elite force that protected the Persian king Immortals because they basically covered their face. So basically, all you saw was a white sheet over their face. So you never saw their face. They were very, very good and effective infantrymen. But whenever one of them died, another one just took their place. So it was almost as if there was always 10,000. And no matter what you did to them, the next day there was going to be 10,000 more. The Immortals never spoke either. They were always silent. And this was quite intimidating because people were used to battle cries and yells and hollers and that sort of thing. What I want to do is take a pause now and have you write a headline. If you were going to do a short newspaper headline or a headline for a web page that summarizes the leadership of Cyrus the Great, I want you to go ahead and do that now. Remember that headlines usually have a noun, and then a verb, and then an object. Now we're going to continue our talk on Darius. Darius had the challenge which may have been even tougher than what Cyrus had, and that was trying to manage this large empire. 35 million people, 70 different ethnic groups, many different languages. One thing he decided to do was divide the empire into 20 different provinces, or satrapies. The Ionians, the Lydians, Egyptians, some of the cities like Susa, Babylon, they had their own area. They all paid different amounts of money depending on how many people lived there or their amount of money to pay. A lot of times they paid in silver, although the people from India, believe it or not, paid in gold, and they paid 360 talents of gold dust, and a talent was going to be a measurement they used back then, and gold was 13 times the value of silver, and silver is what most people paid in back then. So the people from India really were the ones that paid the most in terms of taxes. The Egyptians paid a lot, but they also paid in food. People from Babylon had to supply servants, so they paid money in silver and servants. Now, Darius had the Daric, which was a gold coin, and then he also created silver coins. He created the Pony Express. They were called couriers, and today the term mail courier or mail carrier is used today. He built the Royal Road and also Darius's canal in Egypt that connected the Red Sea to the Nile River. Persepolis was made the capital around 520. It included a lot of very interesting buildings, including the Hall of 100 Columns, which could hold 100 people. It was about 70 yards by 70 yards, which would make it about 3/4 of the width of a football field and length of a football field. The entrance to the city gates had bulls in the front. The bull was a symbol of strength, specifically a symbol of strength in the empire, or a symbol of strength for the king. And the bull entrance you see in that picture is from the Gate of All Nations, which was the entrance to the city of Persepolis back then. The Royal Road was 1,688 miles long specifically, and it had ends approximately every 15 miles, and it was safe travel. They say that you could get from one end to the other in 7 days if you continually changed out horses and really pushed it. And if you take a look at the route of the road did not go in a straight line. It did have to weave around through different mountain ranges and so forth, but it also tried to connect cities. So you've got the major city of Sardis and of Gordium, home to the Gordium knot. You've got Susa, it goes all the way into Persepolis, and so on. And there's the coin. The Daric was the gold coin. It was 97% gold, so it had a high gold content. The taxes that people were required to pay was also a major upgrade over the inconsistent amounts that people got from tributes. A tribute is basically a required gift that the different regions had to give to the king. Taxes was a little bit more enforceable, a little bit better organized, and every city had to pay a certain amount, so it was up to the city leaders to collect from the people themselves. Let's go ahead and write a headline now for Darius. There's a lot of things that he accomplished. If you were going to write a story about him, you don't have to necessarily write the story, but let's go ahead and give a noun, an action verb, and an object for Darius, and be prepared to share those headlines with the class.